Welcome to the Language Fuel podcast. Our mission is to fuel the teaching and learning of languages worldwide. I'm your host, Joanna Smith. Welcome to the Language Fuel podcast, episode number 13. Today I'll be interviewing Heike Papenthin. She is one of the national language advisors, in particular for the German language, that works at ILEP here in New Zealand. Heike talks about her own experience learning languages, and it's very fascinating. She's learned many languages, and she talks about the value of immersion experience in terms of being able to learn very, very well. She's very passionate about starting language learning early, and she talks about this throughout the interview. And she's also talking about how language learning is actually a lifelong journey. And for her, as well as myself and other language learners, she knows that it's ongoing. Technology changes, the words for new cultural things emerge, and one has to continue to keep up one's language learning experience. I really enjoyed talking to Heike. Her enthusiasm for language learning is contagious. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Ka kite anō. So this morning we are here with Heike Papenthin. Heike is the National Advisor for the German language at ILEP, International Languages Exchanges and Pathways here in New Zealand. So we will hear a little bit about her work encouraging the teaching and learning of German in New Zealand schools, but as a bit of a hint, she's also very passionate about getting students to learn any language in New Zealand, and she's going to talk a little bit about that. And I know also, Heike, you have lived in Japan as well. So before we get into your work, what you're doing now with ILEP, do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey up until you came to New Zealand a few years ago now, including your time in Japan and what you did there?
Right. I became really interested in languages, I guess, thanks to my lovely English teacher in Germany. And in Germany, it's a first foreign language you do usually.
Yeah. And it's compulsory, isn't it?
I mean, it's compulsory.
Yeah.
Some do French as the first language, but usually it's English. For me, it was English, and I didn't understand a word because our teacher came in, and I was only 10 years old at the time. And he came in with a stick and a hat.
Wow.
And a jacket or something. So, and then he would introduce those words, but not speak a word of German. And I was
full immersion in English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So annoyed. That was in the early 1970s. I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. What is he thinking? He's definitely German. He must be German. Why does he talk to us only in English? I did not understand it at all. After 9 months, the frustrations went away, and I loved it. I just loved it. And the teacher was a very dry person. He looked actually like somebody from an English textbook, like with a suit and
a traditional old sort of.
So I think he just wanted to convey that culture or so. Okay. So that was really interesting. And then I had lots of amazing teachers in English, and I thought, wow, it's fun. It's great how they teach. I really like to see that they did it all through English and never used a word of German. Wow. We had to learn the vocab actually by also learning the German words, but no explanation, no grammar, whatever in German.
Wow.
So, and as soon as we had learned a little bit of English, we had to describe all the words in English, using English. So it was really strictly only one language in the classroom.
Well, you can go very fast when someone is consistent with that method. Sometimes I think teachers get a bit scared because the pupils, like your first reaction, they get a bit frustrated, and so they back off and use it. But to continue with just the target language is fantastic.
Yes. Yeah. But, looking back now, I think I really started learning languages too late compared to my kids who were exposed to foreign languages a little bit earlier. Right. Because they do it now in elementary school and primary school. That's why I have an accent, and my sons think it's hilarious that mom has an accent, but they don't. I said, because you were younger. So and then I went on. In Germany, you do at a gymnasium, secondary school, you usually do 2-3 foreign languages. So if you're interested, and you have to do a second one as well. It's compulsory, but the third one is just
if you want to.
Yeah, what you want to do. So what did I do? I learned English, then Latin, then Old Greek.
Wow.
And as a hobby, Japanese. That was not in school, but just as my hobby.
And how did you have a teacher outside school, or just through books, or?
Yes, I tried to find teachers, but it was very frustrating because it was not strictly Japanese. And I think by then, I would not accept anymore that people talk to me in my native language.
That's got to be Japanese.
Yes, when they were supposed to teach me a foreign language.
Right.
And that's true to this day. It's much easier when you get immersed. Yes. So I struggled a lot with the teachers and thought, I better go to Japan. Then I did a couple of university classes in my holidays, actually, like summer school courses and so on. Yes, an offer for anybody, and that's how I...
courses in
Japanese. That's how I managed to learn the basics. And then I thought, wow, this is way too hard to just do it as a hobby or in my holidays. Yeah. I lose it as soon as I want to use it. I lose it because I'm not in the training. I don't practice it enough, right? So I thought, I better apply for scholarship. And at that time I thought, by the age of 30, life is almost over. For some reason, I thought like that. So
Please don't tell me that's true.
Yeah, sorry. My way of thinking is not different anyhow. So at the age of 28, I really managed to get a scholarship to go to Japan for 2 years. So that timing was just amazing. Yeah. So yes, I had a great time there and studied Japanese and Japanese culture. And I was again completely immersed, and it was extremely frustrating again. But thinking back to my very first foreign language learning experience helped a lot. Yeah. I knew, if
you get over it after a while. Yeah.
If you now try hard, persist for at least 9 months, it will change. And I think it's very funny that it happened again. You
still had those.
Yes, the same. Yeah. So now I'm fine with it. Yeah. And again, when I came to New Zealand in 2013 to take up this role as National Advisor of German, I had actually, to be honest, never written an email in English in my life.
Wow.
Before
taking
this role. So, what I did? I just tried to imitate. I just had a look at emails which were coming in.
Which is a fantastic way to do it, right? You're just going to see what's coming in and do it. Yeah.
And I learned a lot about the culture here. Mm-hmm. For example, I was quite shocked because I had learned the formal way of writing letters when I was young. Sure. It says, dear sirs, and so on. And here they go like, hi.
Yeah. Hi.
And that was quite really interesting. It still is very interesting. So I learned a lot, many words. So my language learning is ongoing. Yeah. And that's why I got so hooked, I think, on language learning, because it's really a lifelong learning process and very exciting. Imagine what we might be like in 20 years. Sometimes I want to imagine that. And you just mentioned, Joanna, how you struggle with German when it comes to email, because when you were in Germany,
I never had to do it. That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. There wasn't any emails.
So is it emailed or get emailed? Or it's really hard because that was not around. And I imagine in 20 years' time will be different again. So
that's right. The new technologies, and what are the words for these things?
Right.
Yeah. So interesting. So how long were you in Japan, actually?
15 years.
15 years. So it wasn't a 2-year scholarship. Did you just stay, or did you go back to Germany? And
after 2 years, I thought this has been so difficult. This language is really so difficult. You know that for a Westerner, it takes about 3 to 4 times as long as learning a Western language. When you do
quite a different language family. Yeah.
Yes, because you have to practice the characters and all of that. Yeah. And I loved it. It was so hard, so challenging, but I really loved it. And after 2 years, I thought, that would be wasted. That would be wasted completely, because leaving the country, I might lose it again.
That's right.
Yeah, so I decided to stay on, and I had great chances because I was since the age of 11 I really only wanted to be a teacher. No other job I wanted to do.
So were you teaching in Japan then?
Yes.
Okay.
After I had finished my research studies in Japanese and about Japanese culture, I actually got lots of jobs as a university lecturer of German.
Of German, yeah, fantastic. And then now you've come to New Zealand, and ILEP has wonderfully taken you into their organisation through the Goethe Institute, I understand. So what is your role? So you were teaching German in Japan through the medium of Japanese, which is really cool, and I know you've published a few books with some Japanese and German text in them. How do you spend your day-to-day in this role with ILEP?
Oh, that's a very good question. We are sometimes out of the office 80% of our time, depending on the week. So during the school terms, we are very busy, all of us, 5 national advisors, traveling to the schools in the country, visiting them. And and of course traveling is quite time consuming in New Zealand. Yeah. And
no bullet trains.
Yes. What I like about the school visits is really that you get to see a lot, and the differences in New Zealand, and also how people perceive languages in a very different way. For example, I was just last month in Southland at the very, let's say, very end of the country.
Yeah, very bottom of the country, yeah.
And there I heard that, for example, a company, Silver Fern Meats, I think, Meats, that they are very keen on having more students learn German, and they told schools, so they came up with a cooperation kind of
fantastic.
thing, you know.
A bit of funding from the organization.
Not really, but they encourage schools and students to really learn German, because they have just opened 15 offices and branches in Germany.
Wow.
Or German-speaking countries, and they want to expand. And I think that's a very clever move, and it will make a difference, I think, in that part of the country. Wow. And language learning German is quite strong, really, in the South Island, while here in the North Island, you have the feeling, okay, people have so many choices, students in school have so many choices of subjects, they tend to do something else. And I myself, I'm a bit afraid that a couple of those subjects students are currently taking, like accounting, they might be gone within 10 years. There are newspaper articles about that, you know, you find that everywhere. And I wonder, how do we get students prepared for the 21st century? And I think relying on languages, doing something which you cannot really do with such an ease later on in life, because it gets harder the older you are. Your memory is not like, you know, as flexible, I guess, as when you are very young. That is a strong point for language learning and making foreign language learning compulsory in New Zealand from a young age.
Yeah, and certainly I was just in the podcast I recorded yesterday actually talking to someone who he actually was studied Japan and lived in Japan, and he said in his day-to-day business life now, even if he's not using his Japanese with Japanese speakers, he's using all of the skills that come with that language and culture learning, so that cross-cultural experience and just people skills, really, understanding people, because you know, and understand that there are cultural differences and opinion differences and how to navigate that. So that'll never go away.
That's a very good point. Plus, I guess you become wise also. Like my son said, I have two sons, and my younger son, who is now finishing school here in New Zealand, he just said he relates better to people who share this kind of experience. He said, I mean, he was raised in 3 different countries, 3 different cultures, and attended always local schools in all those cultures and countries. So he's trilingual. Both my children are trilingual. Yeah. But, you know, he says these students who have gone through foreign language learning, they would never laugh at my mistakes.
That's right. Yeah.
They would never comment on it. They are polite, but people here in New Zealand are generally really good and polite. But still, it's awkward sometimes when they have such a hard time understanding maybe your accent, pronunciation, whatever, because you make a slight mistake.
Sure.
Even after a couple of years, that can happen. And he says it shows him the understanding is different from people who have gone through the process of language learning.
Yeah, that's right. So more accepting.
I thought that was a clever point, really. And because you mentioned people skills, I think you relate a lot to that.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Heike, we were talking earlier, and you said one of your real passions is to talk about the importance, and we have been doing it. So, what are some other things? I know you've gathered a lot of statistics, and you've interviewed people, and you're really passionate about this. So, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the types of presentations that you give and what your message really is?
I was very surprised to learn that foreign language learning is not compulsory in New Zealand. I actually did not even know there were countries like that. Sorry. Because it's unheard of in Europe, as you know. And I think it adds so much to your life, actually, language learning, that I make it a point to travel when I visit schools, to just make people aware of the need to prepare students for the 21st century or for life in general by making them learn or making it interesting for them to learn a foreign language. And that's part of my role when I talk to careers advisors or to principals or to classes of students or also to teachers. And also I think I try to influence parents a little bit because quite often parents contact me also and ask what can we do to support our child better. Very often, it's like, you know, requests by email I get. So I say, okay, I can only tell you from my own experience, when you are, let's say, a Kiwi German family, no matter how much your child rejects the language at the beginning, because your child finds out that everybody here is maybe on a daily basis only using English, try to encourage him. Never give up talking to your child in German in that case. It's really too late. When you miss out on the first 6 years or so, it's really too late. And I think New Zealand needs to start at a much younger age, because the rest of the world is doing that. Language learning, foreign language learning has been implemented in primary schools all over the world at a very young age. And
there are some schools in New Zealand, I mean, they don't have to, but I know there are some who are doing it, which is, good on them. But I agree, and most of the time it's intermediate if you're lucky. You can get a few, and then there's certainly high school. But it is a bit late, isn't it?
And the big problem in New Zealand is that it's not really sustainable, because you might do one language in your intermediate school, and then you go on to secondary school, but the same language might not be offered. So that's really a hassle, I think, because you need to learn a language continuously for, on average, I would say 4 to 5 years to really master it. But interestingly enough, I found that New Zealanders who have done German and have done it over a couple of years, like you, Jana, they won't really forget the language, because our languages are so closely related.
They are very, very similar. And so that's the advantage of having the similar language family.
And I'm really impressed by the students I see who are doing German up to year 13, and we do offer scholarships. When I say we, it's my country actually, through the PAD, the German it's an arm of the Ministry of Education in Germany, Kultusministerkonferenz, PAD. And 3 students are usually invited to Germany. Through 3 excellent students, year 12 students from New Zealand, to go over to Germany and get together with prize winners from the rest of the world. And they have a fabulous day in Germany, usually 4 weeks, and all paid for by Germany.
Fantastic. What a great incentive for some of these high school students out there.
Exactly. And every second year we send students from New Zealand to Germany for the International German Olympics. Imagine there's something like that around.
They give speeches or something, or
and they learn that German is actually becomes a world language of communication.
That's
when you meet people from Russia and Argentina and Chile and wherever, South
all
Africa,
speaking German together in one place.
And they come back and they always tell us, it has changed my life. And I think that's a great experience. It's not necessarily English, and especially I think people in Germany are not really used to Kiwi accents. When I heard the first New Zealander that was in Germany, actually, I really did not understand it. So
all the vowels are slightly shifted, aren't they?
So when you say English is a world language, I think New Zealanders might have a hard time being understood in Germany also, or in other parts of Europe.
Well, I think a lot of the times when New Zealanders go and work overseas, they modify their own accents, and they sort of moderate it and reduce the Kiwi-ness or something, and people get quite adept at doing that.
And I'm very proud of our New Zealand students of German who are sent on these scholarships and really manage and are great, and they are up to it really. And it's amazing because you start language learning so very, very late in this country, and still
they're achieving.
They excel, I would say.
That's great.
Wonderful. And we have another scholarship for year 12 students through the New Zealand German Student Exchange. Currently we have, just last week we sent 2 students over from New Zealand, and I love it that I can offer these scholarships, and also that we can give them to students in, let's say, rural areas in New Zealand, because I see that this is very different. The culture in the South Island, for example, in isolated areas, it's very hard for some teachers to get out of that isolation, and that's part of my role to make it possible to connect them. And very often this happens also through the scholarships. I go to the schools, I interview the best students.
So you're a key part of the decision making in terms of who's getting these scholarships.
I'm the one who interviews. And I know the criteria of the different organizations. And
wonderful.
Yes. And it's also really interesting because I usually get invited into the classrooms at that occasion. And I see what's going on, and that's very, very important. And especially when you are an outsider, so to speak, different from my French national advisor colleague who is a New Zealander. All the others, we are all...
she's the only one, is that Morgan's the Kiwi doing the French role, and everybody else is I guess, from those countries, I'm
Yes.
assuming. Yeah.
And that's a deliberate decision by the Ministry of Education New Zealand, who invites foreigners like me, foreign specialists, experts, to fulfill this role in this country. And I think it's a wonderful construction, and it has been around, to my knowledge, for more than 3 decades. And it's something New Zealand can be rightfully proud of.
Yeah.
When I reported on this back in Germany for the Goethe Institute 2 years ago, everybody really reacted with a big surprise and said, wow, we don't have that in the United States or in China or in wherever. They really took an interest. It's my vision that New Zealand might be this construction of having national advisors and a team working with schools and conveying not only the most important bits and pieces when it comes to Landeskunde, teaching about the country and methodology, but also maybe a different point of view on teaching. It's my wish that New Zealand continues doing this and maybe becomes a role model for the rest of the world.
Fantastic. What a great vision. I love hearing your passion and how excited you are to be doing this, and I think you are the right person for this role. Your excitement and your energy to encourage language learning in general, and obviously German in specific. That's fantastic. We're getting close to probably the end of the time that we would normally have a podcast. Before we go, what advice would you give to normally I ask, young teachers, people who are just starting out teaching, but I guess because you work with, the parents and the schools and all sorts of different organizations, I guess, what 3 pieces of advice would you give anyone here who's working in the language teaching and learning industry, so how we can realize some of the vision that you have? What are the perhaps 3 things that New Zealand really needs to work on? Or internationally as well, we have international listeners.
Number 1 would be implement foreign language learning much earlier, because you might lag behind in the future, like the UK. The decrease in language learning has been dramatic, and New Zealand is unfortunately also on the same pathway, I'm afraid. And they are now, their businesses are losing out on billions of dollars, the economy, every year because of a lack of language skills. That means you can't really expand. But I'm not only talking about economical things. I think that's not right, because there are, my own son wants to be a pianist, and I think arts are very, very important.
Yes.
You might miss out on lots of chances, opportunities you do not even know are around. That's because you get stuck in what John Hajek from Melbourne calls the Anglo bubble.
Right.
You only notice what's going on inside the English-speaking world.
But that's all you have access to.
Exactly. 75% of the world are not English-speaking. So it's important to take notice of that as well. And culturally, it's very, very interesting. So I like also to give this kind of input here in New Zealand. And I think it requires an openness on New Zealand's side, for the rest of the world to get out of that. And number 3 is, I think actually now, sorry parents, if you are listening, this is maybe a bit shocking, but I think we who were born in the 20th century, me included, we are not the best advice givers anymore to our kids when it comes to the future. So my advice is to take messages like we read recently that these accounting jobs might be gone within 10 years, to take that seriously and maybe push your child rather in the direction of language learning, because that's a skill which will never go away and lose importance. I think it will become more important because we live in an age of globalization, and that means we are all much closer. I mean, when you were a child, you probably did not even dream of what you did later in life.
That's right.
Nor did I when I was very young. I really did not think that the fact that I have been able to do a job in Japan would maybe influence the decision for me to do the national advisor role here in New Zealand, because I have also Japanese skills, which is important for the team, because we have people from different cultures and so on. So you never know where you
never know,
end up. So yes, and make that's maybe number 4, right? But make language learning more sustainable in schools here. It's, to me, unforgivable that in New Zealand only every 5th high school student currently learns a foreign language. that's definitely not enough. Yeah,
Mm.
but we are
Very
working hard
short-sighted.
here on the team.
Yes.
To change that, and I do have a lot of fun talking in schools, and I experience also openness to quite an extent. So I just wish that parents also would push it a little bit more. Actually,
right. That's right. Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been fascinating, talking with you, and I look forward to seeing more of you and your work in the future.
Thanks, Joanna.
Thank you for listening to the Language Fuel podcast. You can navigate to the show notes and links via our homepage at www.languagefuel.com.